Hi there, it's Pete from Hermitage Road. Now I've put my diesel depot back together after I showed you how I can convert it for use by steam engines, and we're looking at the old steam depot, and you can see poking out of the engine shed is a class 58 and a class 56. These were type 5 freight diesels. This is one of the later 56s that were British built. They were far better quality than the early Romanian built examples. They were basically a development of the class 47 with a different engine. Now running through the station are two coal services. One of them's hauled by a class 20, which were gradually phased out over the years and replaced by the 58s and the 56s. This is on a domestic coal train. These delivered to coal yards throughout the country and then by lorry to people's houses, something they haven't got anymore. Also coming through is one of the earlier type class 56s. This is one of the Romanian built examples, which were very troublesome to BR when they got them. Don't know quite why, but they think the build quality was very poor and they had to take them to Doncaster to sort them out. Also down on the shed is another class 20 in the railfreight livery, which brightened them up no end and made them look a bit more modern, although they weren't a very old locomotive, but they were very reliable and a good loco. Now the replacement for some of the 20s was the class 58. This was a modular built locomotive. In other words, it was a frame with all the components like the generator and the engine built onto it, and they could be interchanged easily. Because they were very narrow, you couldn't walk through these locomotives, but they could lift off all the panels and interchange any broken motors, anything like that. Unfortunately, they were never really that successful. They had an anti-slip mechanism on them that didn't work too well, and by the time they'd sorted these 58s out, we'd moved on to privatisation and they were effectively replaced by class 66s, so they'd had a very short life really. I know BR were trying to get orders from abroad for these, but unfortunately that never happened. Before the Type 5 diesels were introduced, the coal services were handled more by class 40s and 47 3s. But as they got bigger and bigger, especially to the power stations where they wanted longer trains, they needed more power. This was the reason for the Type 5s. Class 20 is fitted with Bachmann's own sound decoder. They don't sound too bad, but they're a few years old and they're not quite up to the modern standards from other people. After the 58s were introduced, BR did attempt to introduce the 60s, which were much bigger and much more powerful, and they were a pretty effective replacement for Type 5 diesels. And there's still a few around now being used by GB Railfreight and DB Schenker, and they've generally been a pretty good locomotive. Unfortunately, at the moment there's long lines of ones scrapped and withdrawn at Towton. It's a very sad sight. Coal services were such an important part of the BR's freight traffic in the 80s that it's unfortunate, of course, now we haven't got coal-fired power stations. I believe the last one finished taking coal recently. Now, I did tell you last time about my system of running steam and diesel. On a previous layout years ago, I also in those days used to run American locomotives and British ones, and I wanted to be able to run them realistically. So instead of interchangeable buildings, what I did was built two stations, one side of the layout and the other side of the layout. They were virtually identical and could be used, either one of them could be used as a storage yard or fiddle yard, and you could run through the opposite station with say the American ones, and then you could reverse that and do the same running the British ones. I thought it was a fairly novel idea, though I'm sure I'm not the first one to think of it, but it seemed quite a good idea. Right, well, I'm going to finish for tonight. Thank you very much for everybody who's subbed to me. I'm up to 115 now, which is brilliant. I also like to say, if you could like this, comment, share anything you do, and thank you very much for watching my videos. I do appreciate this. Thank you and goodbye.